See, we working on his brow chakra. We're just in back at the crown chakra.
Chase, don't do that.
All right. Welcome to Waxing the Porpoise podcast. My name is Jim G. Baby, and I'm joined by the usual suspect, Steve.
Good to see you, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with like a fun nickname, and that one just rolled right off the tongue, and it's a little inside baseball between you and I without exposing.
I don't look like Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, you do. You look like Prote with a beard.
Oh, God.
Ooh, maybe we'll cover K-Pax one day. No?
No.
Okay. Dude, spoiler alert, I've never actually seen that movie. I've only seen like snippets of it, like when he's eating
You're missing nothing. I already know you're going to say the part where he eats a banana with the peel on it.
Yeah. All right, so we are on episode 5 now. So I wanted to run back a little bit and say if this is your first time listening to the show, we're kind of a variety show here. It started out I wanted to review films because I'm a big movie buff, and then my co-host Steve here has, by his own admission, only seen like 12 films, only slightly exaggerating. So I thought it'd be fun premise to like make him watch a bunch of shit because he hasn't seen it. I'm always telling him, have you seen this? Have you seen this? He's never seen it. So what better opportunity? So, but then I got to thinking, what if I don't want to have to start a whole separate podcast if we want to talk about some other shit. So he's a big fan of like true crime stuff, as am I, and I kind of bend probably to more to like the high strangeness, conspiratorial, supernatural. So I figured, growing up, Unsolved Mysteries was like one of my favorite shows, and I love movies. So why don't we just go halves on a bastard and try to put together a show where we get to bounce around and not just be talking about one thing. So that's what Waxing the Porpoise is. That's what this show is. So we kind of bounce between topics at random. At the end of the show, we'll figure out what we're talking about next. So if this is your first time, that's what we're all about. I know we're pretty new at this, so we just kind of just dive straight into what we're talking about. But yeah, check out our earlier episodes to try and get a feel. I think it's not an equal mix. We've only done one like unexplained kind of case so far with Jason Simpson, but now we're leading into today's topic. This episode, we're going to be discussing Johnny Depp and his ownership of the Viper Room. There's a lot that is involved with that we're going to be digging into today, and it kind of sucks because I know people are going to be like, you're clout chasing or you're going after like a hot topic thing because it was like I've been thinking about this for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden Johnny Depp has this fucking thing that's taking over the media with him and the Amber Heard trial, and it's like, to be clear, this is not why I fucking picked this. I heard about like his involvement and ownership of the Viper Room and the disappearance of his business partner Anthony Fox, like maybe even longer than 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
It's interesting because I'm also not following this Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial very closely. I mean, a couple little things will come up that are funny that I've heard about.
Yeah.
But I think that's my cat. I think the story that we're talking about today has been getting a little bit more attention because of that trial. And what I mean is, for anybody that hasn't been paying attention, back in 2018, Amber Heard wrote some op-ed saying that she was a survivor of domestic violence, and that's the key thing behind this current defamation trial. So he's suing her for $50 million. She's countersuing for $100 million. And I think the only people that are going to win from this are the insanely large legal teams on both sides that are just more than happy to keep that a case that just potentially could just be like a big nothing. The jury could just be like, you guys are both fucking nuts. You get nothing. Have a good day. Mm-hmm. But one of the interesting things that's come out of it is she hired this private investigator to basically try to dig up any dirt about Johnny Depp's past. And this is one of those skeletons that's kind of always been in his closet that wasn't talked about a lot, but he kind of found it, researched it, and it sounds like he kind of thought it was a little bit of a nothing burger as well. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you'd probably be hearing more and more about it during this insanely public smear campaign that they're putting each other through, which boggles my mind. You know, if they're both claiming the other one ruined their career, but now they're both getting up for a 6-week trial, saying the most horrible, awful things about each other. They recorded each other fighting, which is insane. Yeah. And, you know, I feel like that's so much more damaging to both of their reputation. But who knows? You know, I think the funniest thing is at one point she took a vengeful shit in the marital bed. And when he was on the stand and they were asking him about it, he called it a grumpy. It's like, and she left a grumpy in the bed.
He did not. I have not heard this.
Yeah, there have been some pretty funny little highlights surrounded by days of just boring nothing, you know, mudslinging back and forth. But yeah, I mean, just from the little bit I've seen, she seems like an insane sociopath, and yes, you know, he's coming across much better. But who knows? I haven't been watching a whole lot of it. All of that is a long way of saying that it's having the unintended consequence of making this story that we're talking about sort of brought back into the light. Because when I was doing some research about it, I saw that there was like more recent articles, which I thought was surprising, and then come to find out this is kind of why. So, yeah. All that being said, yeah.
I think she even went out and she said like specifically about this case with the disappearance of his business partner, like that she was gonna bring light to that and hired a PI. And I just saw like headlines, you know, but like something like, you know, to the effect that he's got secrets, and, you know, so yeah, that's definitely why this story too is back in the fore, at least a little bit. It didn't seem to really catch on, like, because, you know, guilt by association, they look at her and they think she's crazy, so they probably think this story is crazy too. And I mean, I'll be, you know, the first one to admit this. The relationship between Johnny Depp and Anthony Fox is highly speculative, and it's very circumstantial, but I think it's interesting to talk about. And I mean, even with it getting dredged up in the news now with the trial and everything, it's something I think a lot of people don't know about. So I thought it
has a lot of the hallmarks of an interesting disappearance. Mm-hmm. The timing is very suspect. Yeah. And I mean, you add in a huge celebrity like Johnny Depp, a mysterious disappearance, accusations of fraud and theft, and, you know, you kind of, it makes like a nice little stew of a story that you think would be more well known, but it's surprising that it's not. So
yeah, I think too, with Amber Heard, I think Tom Arnold has her dead to rights.
What kind of a sick bitch takes the ice cube trays out of the freezer?
Oh my God! Way to shoehorn that one in there, Jesus!
I had to. I was thinking.
Yeah, I was like
some bombs.
I was like, where are you going with this? I thought when you said Tom Arnold, I was like, okay, he clearly must be thinking of somebody else. There's no way there's an actual Tom Arnold connection here. I was wrong.
And wouldn't it be funny, like, if, like, when they
What's that even from?
That's from True Lies. Have you ever seen True Lies? God, tell me you have.
I have, but let's see.
Fuck.
It would have been like 97, maybe, and I certainly haven't seen it since then.
Oh, man. It's so good. Dude, Bill Paxton plays a fucking slime ball in it. Just for him, his part alone is pretty great. But
you know I love Bill Paxton.
Yeah, so maybe you're due for a rewatch.
Taken too soon.
Yep, he was indeed. All Okay, so
Yeah. So, do you want to get into the history of the Viper Room itself, and we can kind of just see where it goes from there?
yeah, totally. So okay, so this story involves obviously Johnny Depp and the ownership of the Viper Room, which is kind of like I think it's up there with like, CBGBs and like the, what's the other one I'm thinking? Like the Whiskey A Go Go as like,
Yeah, the Roxy is another big one in Hollywood,
there
I
you
think.
go. Yeah, like so in the LA area, like mainly through like the lens of the Hollywood, like nightlife, rock stars, one of these high profile rock clubs where a lot of bands made their name, and it's like a marquee, place to get noticed down there, and very high profile club. So the Viper Room specifically, and I mean we've broached it too a little bit so far, but we're also discussing the main theme is one of Johnny Depp's business partners, Anthony Fox, who disappeared, and he owned the Viper Room with him, and he's never been found to this day. So that's the jumping off point, and I wanted to just go into a brief little bit of history about the Viper Room, because the Viper Room, the building itself, has a lot of history to it, and it's pretty interesting. So to preface the story we're going to jump into, the background of the Viper Room and its various incarnations, it provides some perspective, namely to the site's humble beginnings, the lurid history in LA and Hollywood that's been peppered with, tragedy and all kinds of things that, so I guess in the 20s, it started out as a grocery store. Then in the 40s, it was bought by the infamous mob gangster Mickey Cohen, and who was also frequented by his close confidant, Bugsy Siegel, where they turned it into the Cotton Club, which they were kind of shooting for like a West Coast kind of Harlem vibed club, where there was, prostitution, strippers. I'm sure there were some drugs that were involved, racketeering, that kind of thing. It went throughout the 40s and 50s, went through a lot of different names. One of the key ones, it was for 18 years, it was the Melody Room, and it was also frequented by gangsters, and it was mainly a cabaret. And one of my favorite incarnations is sort of from 73 to 1980. It was named Filthy McNasties. I wish I had that nasty bump, that nasty. Do you like that? Then in the 80s, it had another long stint where it ran as a jazz club called The Central. And so this is where it takes us to the beginning of our story. So, and fun fact, I found out it was actually Tom Waits, who suggested to Johnny Depp that he buy the Viper Room when it was known as The Central pre-93.
That is so fun.
Yeah. I guess there is some cool history about after Depp's ownership, so I think maybe I'll save that for later, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But so yeah, that takes us to the beginning of this story, and to be clear too, so an important point to note is Johnny Depp went into, it wasn't just him and Anthony Fox who owned this place. It was 5 or 6 other people. I tried really hard to figure out who these other people were, but I've narrowed it down with certainty to Anthony Fox, another guy named Chuck E. Weiss, who was kind of like he seemed like he bounced from band to band, like kind of like a stage guy, or like a house guitar player. If someone needed a guitar player to jump up, that was him. And he kind of had connections with a bunch of celebrities and stuff. Johnny Depp, of course. Then a guy named Sal Jenko, who's a pretty mysterious figure, but he was Johnny Depp's lifelong best friend. They met on 21 Jump Street. Right. And he played Sal the Blowfish in the 80s. He's, from all accounts that I found, he's like a D-list actor who appeared in, his claim to fame was 21 Jump Street, and then he kind of just petered out, was in a couple other films, and I couldn't find anything else about him. And he was like mainly the manager, like I'm assuming running kind of like the day-to-day of the Viper Room. Like Depp was kind of doing him a solid, like, hey, you can latch on here and do that. But I guess it was listed that he had some kind of partial ownership as well. And then there's two others, and from all accounts, like I think it was probably a couple LLCs that Depp
probably
and
just
Fox like set up, you know. So
or just silent partners.
yeah,
You know,
it was really hard to find that kind of information, because this is going to tie into the end, and if we're like looking at motive and like who may have wanted Anthony Fox to disappear, I wanted to really kind of peel that onion back. But I mean, we'll get to it, but my opinion is Johnny Depp at least had to have known about what was going on, if not was like made a concerted effort to try and make him gone. But anyway, so that's kind of a brief history of the Viper Room, and then these are the key figures at play who all owned the Viper Room. And I guess the one last thing I'll touch on is, so this is around like late 92, 93, when they came into it. To kick off the grand opening, Johnny Depp pulled in a bunch of favors with his celebrity friends, and he got Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers to play the grand opening. They played a full set at the Viper Room, and it was a star-studded occasion.
Yeah, from what I read, Anthony Fox was the sole owner when it was still the Central, which was like a jazz club. But then when Johnny Depp and his co-investors came in, they actually took a 51% ownership stake, and Anthony Fox still had 49%. But I think that was probably part of the draw to bring Johnny Depp and his star power in is, hey, I'll give you majority ownership to kind of come in and make this like the cool place for the young Hollywood people to come and hang out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if I were in that position, you know, and you're looking at the star power and like the draw of Johnny Depp and everything that comes with him, you know, sounds like a smart business decision, you know, to concede the majority stake or even a little bit more to reap the benefits that seem like it would override that from what Depp would be able to bring in there.
Yeah. So pretty soon they were able to test to see how much that star-studded ownership would be able to weather some bad publicity, because that ownership transition happened in early 93, and then in October of 93 is famously when River Phoenix overdosed on the front curb and died.
That was actually Halloween night, October 31st of 93.
Well, I think it was.
Am I wrong?
It was the night before. Well, it was Halloween morning, so it was late.
Okay.
So yeah, I saw it reported as Halloween quite a bit as well, but it was actually the 30th, and they were partying that night, and then it crossed over into Halloween. But what I thought was interesting was I just assumed it was like he shot up and overdosed, but they made it sound like it was a liquid speedball, which sounds insane. But in liquid form, somebody's like, here, try this drink, and just like immediate overdose.
In your research, did you see anything about like people speculating on like if someone tried to take him out on purpose by doing it through that method, because it would be so clean and like seemingly untraceable? Like if you just spiked someone's drink like that and offered them and said, hey, check this out.
No, I wasn't reading anything like that.
Okay.
I think it was just, you know, an insane drug den nightclub where stuff like that was just happening with impunity. And who knows, it could have been intentional, but I think it's more likely it just got mixed up, or who knows, maybe not. Maybe it was just an accidental overdose. But yeah, so that cast the nightclub in kind of a different light, you know, but it kind of seemed like that even added to its notoriety in a dark kind of way. Yeah. Because it's not like they closed right away. It was still kind of the place to go
Yeah, I think Johnny Depp closed it for 2 weeks in honor of River Phoenix, and everyone brought, they made it like a vigil outside. There was a bunch of fans bringing flowers and, kind of collectibles and stuff to pay their respects to River Phoenix out front. But yeah, it definitely didn't close down, that's for sure, like for good or anything.
Right. So then things really started to get sour over the next, 5 to 10 years. It sounds like there's some accusations of some shady accounting. Not that Johnny Depp and his people were necessarily doing the books, but Anthony Fox thought for sure there was some fuckery going on, that some assets were being funneled to some other business ventures and just being taken off of the bottom line of the club. And, it was sort of like a growing escalation of tension between the two of them.
Right. Yeah, and that's well. Before we get too far into Anthony Fox, too, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. This one's kind of funny. I guess Depp kind of styled himself as like a quasi like rock star. He was quoted as saying, he wanted to like the vibe that he sought for the Viper Room was, quote, "I don't want to have some elitist policy like a lot of clubs do, but at the same time, I want this to be a place where people with a high profile won't feel like they're on display." He also played there occasionally with his own band, which I thought you might get a kick out of this. I don't know if you saw it. He had a band called P, as in the letter P, which I thought was
I saw he's been in some pretty garbage bands.
Yeah, his buddy Sal Janko from his 21 Jump Street days, friend Bill Carter, and the Butthole Surfers' very own lead singer Gibby Haynes played the Viper Room as the band, the fucking letter P, which I thought was just, God, just stroking your own, or smelling your own shit. But yeah, I guess he's played a lot, like guitar with people, and he's done tours here and there, and I don't know. Anytime I think about Johnny Depp and like the Viper Room, like just the way he dresses himself and styles himself, like still like Jack Sparrow, I always think of like Godsmack and that fucking that voodoo song. Like that's the first thing I think of when I think of like the Viper Room and Johnny Depp. Fucking like voodoo, like it's just like blaring in my head.
Yeah,
because it's weird. It's like after I feel like at a certain point he tried to like morph into like this, like, I don't know. I think he got influenced pretty heavily by like Hunter S. Thompson. I know he kind of went off the deep end when he researched Fear and Loathing. Like he stayed with Hunter S. Thompson. There's some funny video clips of like Hunter S. Thompson while Johnny Depp's there researching the role, and Hunter S. Thompson's neighbor starts fucking shooting at him. And have you seen that clip?
I have.
He starts shooting back at him, and he's like, "Oh, you goddamn son of a bitch!" Boom.
Yeah.
And they're sitting like just doing drugs like on his patio. So yeah, I think, because I like to think of Depp in a good light with like, great Gilbert. That's like that's one of my favorite movies is Gilbert Grape, and like beyond that, then he started like styling himself into this like vagabond, like Jack Sparrow, like he was like priming himself to become that, like in the late 90s and going into that film, but whatever. So
I've never seen Gilbert Grape.
Oh man, dude, it's so good. Maybe one day. I don't know if that's a deep enough cut to ever cover it, but you should just watch it one day. It's just a good film. Oh yeah, another fun little factoid too is you remember the lead singer of the Counting Crows, Adam Duritz? Sure. He actually, in like 94, from like late 93 to like middle of 94, he had just gotten famous with like Mr. Jones, and Counting Crows popped off. Yeah, banger. But like he like kind of shunned the spotlight, and it like freaked him out. So he went to work as a bartender for like 8 months at the Viper Room because I guess he knew Depp and was like, hey, I want to get out of the spotlight, so let me work at this place where there's tons of celebrities. But anyway, he tended bar there for like 8 months, and he actually met Jennifer Aniston there, and they dated for a little bit, which is a fun little tidbit that I found over the course of this research. But I was like, that's fucking weird, man. Like, you just like got freaked out from all the spotlight and you want to just go be a bartender for 8 months to find yourself, like inverse eat, pray, love. I just thought that was kind of weird, but
boy, that's another just fun fact.
yeah.
The whole time you were telling me that story, I was just thinking, I don't take lip from no bartenders neither.
You see Doc Holliday, you tell him I'll send him to hell on a shutter. Yeah.
Skin it.
Skin that
smoke back.
God, I remember when I grew up and got older, and I was like, holy fuck, that the fat guy from the beginning is goddamn Billy Bob.
Yeah. Happened to notice you're in my chair.
You're just gonna sit there and bleed. Man, that's such a good movie too. Another great Val Kilmer follow-up from Thunderheart. I think he made that right after Thunderheart as well. How fun!
It was definitely in the prime of his career, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, I think now we can pivot squarely on the high strangeness here involved with Anthony Fox disappearing. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Like we said, took over ownership in early '93. River Phoenix famously overdosed late '93. Sounds like these guys were just fighting all the time for the better part of 6 years, because in 1999, Fox finally filed a formal lawsuit to demand his share of the money from Depp and the other associates. And I assume he had hired some kind of forensic accountant or something to sort of look through the books and was able to definitively say, because, if you just have suspicion, like, money seems to be going somewhere, that's really not going to get you anywhere. So there had to have been something, because I've seen different reports about what became of this lawsuit, but without getting too ahead of ourselves. So the lawsuit, like most, takes forever, and the wheels of justice turn incredibly slowly. So it sounds like Fox wasn't going to testify until the 20th of December 2001, and coincidentally, the day before, on the 19th, he went missing, along with his truck and a .38 caliber revolver, which in and of itself is an awfully strange coincidence. And then they ended up, so this was down in LA, I want to say like Ventura County, wherever the
Ventura County.
So that's like North LA.
It's like northwest. Yeah, it's like northwest as the crow flies. It's like 20-30 minutes ish outside of like downtown, like Hollywood. Yeah.
More like Hollyweird, right? Yeah. So then no sign of him, but then they find his truck 2 weeks later in Santa Clara, California, which is, to those of you who aren't familiar with the local area, is about 300 miles north, near the Bay Area. It was strange that there was still several $1,000s in his bank account that wasn't fully cleaned out, because, as we'll get into later, there's speculation on, was he murdered? Did he try to go off the grid? Did he kill himself? So him leaving money in his bank account is an interesting fact when trying to figure out what the most likely outcome was, right? So if he just decided to go off the grid, it seems strange that he would leave money in his account. But if he was murdered or killed himself, that seems plausible that he would leave some money.
What the fuck were you thinking about here?
Do you want to explain what that's from, or just leave people confused forever?
Yeah, confused forever.
Okay.
A little inside baseball.
Yeah, or inside football.
One day.
Chase, don't do that.
God, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just derailed you. I've been, those fucking bumps have been burning a goddamn hole in my pocket.
Yeah. Well, because, God, they've got to be like
They were
10 years old now.
They were so fucking hard to find. It was. I spent more fucking time than I really want to admit finding those gems and putting them into audio format.
Well, you want to drop another one while we're at it?
You have any moves? I'd like to see you incorporate them.
Oh,
Okay.
man. All right, I got it out of my system.
All right. So
You're standing straight up and down like a wedding.
Dick.
that audio quality is so bad, but it's worth it.
It is. All right, I'm really done. I'm done for sure.
Okay. Yeah, so even though Anthony Fox disappeared and obviously never testified at the trial, it appears that the court case continued in spite of his absence, and then another 2 years goes by, and this is where I started to see a little bit of conflicting information. Maybe it's just because I obviously I'm not a lawyer, but I think a lot of the people that cover this stuff also are not lawyers, so they kind of confuse and conflate terms which are contradictory to each other. Because in one thing I saw, they thought Anthony Fox's case wasn't very strong. Other people said that the judge ruled in his favor. Another thing said that the judge just scolded Johnny Depp, and another one that said it was a preliminary ruling. You know, so there's all these different, slightly similar but different accounts of what actually happened as a result of the trial. But I found a quote that basically said Depp breached his fiduciary duties. The facts established persistent and pervasive fraud and mismanagement and abuse of authority. Okay, so that in and of itself, regardless of what the technical legal outcome was, proves that, yeah, there was some shady shit going on. Fox knew about it, and it was clear enough to this judge to issue that, even if it's not a ruling, even if that was just like a statement, you know, then that's enough. And so then I saw other conflicting pieces of information that said, as a judgment in that case, that Depp was compelled to transfer his ownership to Anthony Fox's daughter. A different one said that it was just a settlement, or he sold it or gave it. I literally saw all four of those reported separately. So I don't know what the truth is, but as a result of that trial, his ownership stake was given, transferred, sold, bequeathed, whatever, to Anthony Fox's daughter. So at that point, you know, he's out, which is like a little bit of a foreshadow. If you're gonna try to murder somebody to avoid them testifying in trial, it would be really helpful if the trial just didn't go ahead and continue on without them there. Seems like not the smartest move, but then again, a lot of criminals are dumb. They might not know that if they take this guy out, that it's still going to keep going. It's not like he's the only eyewitness in a murder trial, and if he's gone,
You are a coward, son of a bitch!
you don't have his testimony, and now your case is nothing.
Right. Yeah. You think, that's kind of like movie logic, you know, like, oh, just take this guy out, you know, and everything else just vanishes. It goes away in a puff of smoke, you know, not
Right.
So, yeah, and the same thing, like when I first heard about this, I was like, oh man, this is intriguing. And I didn't hear any other sides about it. But once I started digging into it, it's not as clear of a cut of a case. Like, yeah, he was supposed to, you know, testify. It looked like he had Johnny Depp dead to rights, and he was taken out. Like, ooh, I want to believe in like the supernatural, and like I want to believe in that kind of stuff. But the more I broke it down too, I was like, yeah, there is a reasonable doubt going on here, like that it wasn't, you know, Depp acting alone, and far from that. I mean, that's just kind of fun to speculate on. But the more I dug into it, you know, there's some stuff that we'll get into here with Anthony Fox's background that doesn't look good for him, kind of paints him like as a little bit of a charlatan maybe. And then it does carry a lot of weight what that judge said. I mean, that's coming from a judge saying that clearly from what he saw initially, that Depp had breached his fiduciary duties and abused his authority and management and all that kind of stuff. But then, you know, an interesting point was after Depp had like liquidated his shares or whatever, and he settled or bequeathed, you know, his ownership stake and all the monies involved with that to Amanda Fox, Anthony Fox's daughter. I guess to this day, she's come out and said she has nothing but love for Johnny Depp, and you know, like holds no ill will and doesn't think that he's involved. So I was like, huh, because that was a nugget that I hadn't heard. Like when I heard all this, you know, kind of drama with this, I figured, you know, the daughter would be right there kind of championing, like being one of the ones saying, yeah, like he had to have been involved or knew something about taking out my dad, when it's actually the opposite of that, which I thought was pretty intriguing too. Because you would think that she, if there was something to that, she would be, you know, one of the main cheerleaders and wanting to pursue that. But maybe she knew what, right. Another side, maybe she knew what she was up against, and she was getting out clean with the sale of the Viper Room and what Johnny Depp gave to her as a result of that lawsuit, and just didn't want to stir anything up, and like, okay, I'm going to just leave this here. There's a lot of directions that could go too, but...
Well, I don't know if you saw that around the time of the disappearance, not that Johnny Depp needed to physically be there to kill this guy or have him kidnapped or whatever, but it sounds like around that time he was spending most of his time living over in France.
Look, I'm giving a cigarette to a baby. Suck on this cigarette, my darling. Life is shit. Get to know this.
With his then, I don't know if it was his wife or girlfriend or whatever, the mother of his kids. So
Paradise.
Yeah, I mean, him physically not being in the country doesn't prove anything necessarily, but it does lend itself to like the possibility that, you know, he's just not there. So
right.
Who knows?
Yeah,
but
I think the strangest thing though is just like on its face, like the disappearance of this guy, like, and the proximity to him testifying. I mean, like, that's like, you know, red flag, and that's bait, you know, to like jump on this and be intrigued, right? You know, like someone's supposed to testify the next day, they go up, they end up missing, and they're still missing to this day. It's like, that's fucking wild, you know? And it happens to be involved with the ownership of this marquee, like, rock club establishment that's got all kinds of other celebrities tied to it, and then obviously mainly Johnny Depp also owned it, was business partners with this guy. It's like, that's pretty goddamn intriguing. And two, I think people that aren't from California, I knew you threw in that they found him 300 miles away, but yeah, you hear like Santa Clara, and you know, you probably think that that's maybe close by, but yeah, that's all the way up near San Francisco, like San Jose area. Like, so for him to turn up a week later, I think, week and a half later, with a fucking gun in his glove box, didn't take any of his money, and his truck's just dumped 300 miles away from where he was in Ventura. It's like, that screams like something fucked up happened, you know? Like, I didn't see any like history of like mental illness or like instability on the part of Anthony Fox. Like, it looked like he should have been like dug in tight as a tick on this trial and this lawsuit, because he was coming after what he thought was rightly his, and that was taken. So, well, anything beyond that, you know, is just, it's all speculation. It's like, did Johnny Depp have something to do with it, or didn't he? And then it's like, pick your adventure.
There's a few interesting things. One, if you're going to testify in a trial that there's conflicted reports of how likely you are to win, one extremely negative thing that comes out of that is you get to be cross-examined. So if you have kind of a shady past, which it sounds like this guy has a little bit of a shady past with some other business dealings and things like that, you might not want to get up on the stand. And so, yeah, you're suing him, hoping to get your money back, but it might not be worth
650 mark down from 10.
Getting up there and getting shredded on cross-examination, and it bringing up a lot more damning information about you, more damning than positive.
Yeah, I guess that's one angle I didn't really entertain, but it could make sense, you know, to like a lesser degree of, you know, like people saying like, you know, Michael Jackson and, you know, the King, you know, Elvis or Hitler, you know, they all did something and then they went into hiding and they're actually still alive, or, you know, they went off to do a double life. I mean, that's highly possible. And maybe he just, you know, and maybe that's why the daughter Anthony Fox's daughter too just played it off like, yeah, everything's great, and I love Johnny Depp, and thank you for bringing us closure, and yada yada yada. And then she just goes up and could funnel it back to her dad. I mean, that's taking some leaps of logic, but I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
Well, so here are a couple other things to consider. It didn't say that all of his money was left behind. It just said that his accounts had several $1,000s left in it, which, who knows if one of the theories is that he just faked his own disappearance or, executed his own disappearance. If that's the case, he probably knew that any money that's left over for his estate is going to go to his kid, right? Because if he's unmarried, so it's not like, that's weird. Why did he disappear and not take all his money? Well, maybe that's his clever way of leaving it to his daughter without like pulling it out and giving it to her the day before he goes missing, because then it looks like, oh, this is willful. And also,
and it was a relatively low amount of money. I mean, we said thousands,
it is,
but it wasn't like a fuck ton or anything. So he could also be okay with, like, if that just went away or dissolved or something, he'd be okay with that too.
Well, and also Santa Clara, for those who don't know, is where Great America is. So maybe he just wanted to go up and have fun it's like a Six Flags type theme park.
Oh, God.
But also where they found his truck was like a couple miles from San Jose International Airport, which is a pretty busy airport, but it's not like a LAX or SFO or, LaGuardia, but it's still busy.
It's still a big dog. Like you can get out of the country from there.
Yeah, it's international. But what's interesting is this was right after 9/11. I think this was like December. I can't remember if I.
Yeah, it was December 19th, December 20th.
Yeah, 2001. So, if this was like pre 9/11, I could see it being a little more likely that he'd be able to kind of slip through the cracks, and have somebody buy a ticket under a different name or whatever. Find a way out, like buy it under the name Tony Fox instead of Anthony, and just kind of slip out. Because I have to imagine if people who are looking into this, it's like you could check those flight manifests from that day or the next day or whatever, see if he was on a flight. But since it's so close to 9/11, they had that shit locked down. So, I mean, unless they didn't ever look for it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe too. I mean, that's only 2 months after 9/11. Maybe there's some time in between, like that gray area, that he could have slipped through the cracks, while they're trying to like implement all kinds of changes to the way people fly. I don't know.
It's a possibility. It just seems strange. They happen to find his truck like a mile or two from a pretty it's major enough to get you almost anywhere you need to go, but not so major where it's, like I said, like an LAX or an SFO or like Atlanta, like the biggest airports in the country. But yeah, San Jose is a pretty big airport.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't pick up on that. I didn't realize he was that close of proximity to the airport there. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to get into some of the other little strange pieces of circumstantial evidence that might point you in one direction or another.
Yeah, do you have some more like against Depp, or because I have a pretty beefy list of stuff that I found out that go against Anthony Fox's character that kind of made me kind of ride the fence and go back and forth a little bit.
I have pretty much nothing that implicates Depp at all. Pretty much everything I have that seemed relevant was pointing more towards a voluntary disappearance or possibly suicide. So we can go into that however you like.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean that's true. I mean I don't have anything else either that, barring just highly speculative or circumstantial kind of stuff against Depp. I mean, if you just look at it on its face, it looks a little fishy, but once you start digging into this, so yeah, like the first thing that I have is, I guess we can just do popcorn style if you want. We can just go back and forth. But this one I thought was pretty interesting. So on or around the day Anthony Fox disappeared, he sent a letter to his mother, and also preface, I guess he was super close with his mother. It seemed like a only child kind of situation, but I could be completely wrong. But he was very close with his mother. He seemed kind of like a mama's boy, from what that's what I was able to infer a little bit. But so he sent a letter to his mother the day before he disappeared, the contents of which she refused to divulge to his brother Charles. Okay, so he's not an only child.
Yeah, he definitely had one brother.
Okay, yeah, and it's suspected that letter contained vital information that the mother has never disclosed, or PIs have never been able to get out of her. So that seems fishy, like going against him, trying to do something shady.
Well, and did you read about her will when she died?
I don't know if I did. Oh, yes. Yeah, the naming him as a beneficiary and all that.
Yeah, so she had a will. I don't know when she died, but it sounds like the latest draft of her will was written in June of 2003, so, a year and a half later. His disappearance is acknowledged in the will in some way, and he was left, you can pick a piece of furniture of your choice and a half share of the estate, which in those days, I guess, would have been like 350,000 pounds. But the thing I thought was most interesting, it says, should he not appear within 2 years of her death, the mom, his share would be held in a trust for his daughter. So, she died in 2004, and, we don't know if those wishes were executed the way they were supposed to. I mean, just the fact that she acknowledges the disappearance and says, you can have, the furniture and a piece of the estate. You basically have 2 years after I die to come pick it up. I mean, that's pretty convincing to me anyway. Whatever he wrote to her in that letter was basically like, hey, I've got to go. Like, my business is falling apart. I can't do this trial because it's gonna uncover more things than I would like, and I basically just have to disappear and go off the grid. Because if he wrote her a suicide note, she would never say, okay, well, you have 2 years after I die to come get your shit. Yeah. Or if he wrote a letter that was like, I'm in real bad trouble. There's people after me. He could have done that. It could have been, I have to go on the run because these people are coming after me because I know things, or I've dealings with whoever, so I have to just disappear. Mm-hmm. But either way, that still lends itself to a voluntary disappearance, not like an abduction, murder, or suicide.
Right. Yeah, he could have got spooked by something he saw at the Viper Room, or just information that he came to know while being involved in that world too. So yeah, it could have been, an indirect, it came from him. I need to make this disappearance happen kind of thing. So yeah,
and I saw a few reports of some of his previous business dealings, some really shady stuff, and it sounds like his mom helped him out quite a bit in making some of these problems go away by, like he had a former bankruptcy case that she apparently helped him create, like some fraudulent, like a list of fictitious debtors through in a previous bankruptcy filing to just kind of help him wiggle his way out of it. So I'm sure he felt like he could trust his mom with whatever damning information. He could tell her the truth. He wouldn't be like sugarcoating it, because she knows his past and he knows her past, and helping him fabricate some of this stuff. So that's just another indicator of what I think is most likely what happened.
Yeah, I saw that one too, that his mom helped him perpetuate a fraud in the former bankruptcy case. Another one that kind of goes back to his family history that I thought was pretty interesting too was so Anthony Fox, he was a British citizen, and he was a US and UK citizen. He held a UK passport, and his mom, they came from a historically wealthy British family that even had some royal ties. His grandfather was a renowned botanist who advised the British royal family on tree planting in palace grounds and bequeathed acres of pristine woodland to the UK National Trust. His mother owned an apartment in Kensington, one of the most exclusive areas in London, which was stuffed full of rare and expensive antiques and artworks. So yeah, he's kind of, it seems like his background, and he had some kind of a cushion there, and he had, a partner in crime in his mom that he could lean on. So, and like the failed businesses and things, and kind of some reports of some shadiness on his part. Definitely, when I started seeing that, it definitely kind of swung the door the other way on like, yeah, maybe.
Well, and I don't know if you also saw that some of his family members basically said like, yeah, he was a pretty eccentric dude who has disappeared in the past several times.
Yeah, that one I was like, oh man.
And one of the quotes was like, yeah, he always had an interest in living off the grid. Like, okay, yeah, I mean that sort of fits with this scenario.
I am the last one.
What the fuck you think you're doing?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you read or are aware of some of the things related to his ex-wife. Did you see some of that?
I saw some of that, like his ex-wife reported seeing him in Santa Barbara about 6 months after he had vanished. Not Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been there.
So one thing I saw,
like, yeah.
it's pretty non-consequential, but little things like this just drive me nuts. Because one thing said Santa Barbara, which is even further northwest of LA than Ventura, right?
Right.
But a different report I was reading said that she saw him in Montclair, California, which is like northeast LA, which
getting into like the Inland Empire area.
Yeah, I guess I'm not super up to like LA geography, but it seemed like the type of place where if you were trying to disappear, stay sort of close to home, you wouldn't necessarily expect to run into family there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, Santa Barbara's, I'm not sure if it's further away, but it's definitely more of I imagine more people would be going there than they would to Montclair. So yeah, so 6 months after he disappeared, his ex-wife was in a Barnes & Noble in Montclair, Santa Barbara, who the fuck knows? And she says that she saw him sitting in a chair reading a book. And this information actually came out later through the private investigator. I don't know if this was known at the time, because the ex-wife said she actually took this information at the time to the Ventura Police Department. And they're like, yeah, cool, thank you so much for telling us that. There's the door.
Yeah.
And she tried telling him that he had done this kind of thing before, and they were like, wow, that's really interesting, thank you. There's the door again.
Yeah, go fuck.
And so
Chase, don't do that.
Yeah, so she said that when the man that she thought was her ex-husband saw her, you know, it'd be one thing if he just like looked at her and just looked back down and didn't acknowledge her, right? Because then maybe it's like, oh, it's possibly just another dude. But this guy had like a terrified look on his face, jumped up, ran out the door. She, which is not something a totally innocent person would do. So yeah, he ran, got into a car, drove away, and she had the wherewithal to chase after him and got the license plate, which know, she then reported to. Yeah, she reported that to the police, and the only thing I could tell that they told her was that the car was registered to a woman. So
side piece.
That's an unusual fact. And she also told the private investigator that in the past, because this isn't his first foray into financial downfall.
He needs some milk.
She said that in the past, like when he would hit other financial problems, he told her he was going to leave the States altogether, go back to the UK, and stage his own abduction, basically.
Mm-hmm. So,
you know, he cut off contact with her, trashed his apartment, disappeared. And then a few weeks later, she traced him to a woman's house. And so the ex-wife thinks like, okay, well, this is his MO. This is what he's done before. This is literally what he said he was going to do if the shit ever hit the fan. So it seems more likely than not, then that's what he did. But what happened in between his disappearance and the 2 years after his mom died, nobody knows, right? So he could have just gone fully off the grid and just decided it's not worth me coming out of hiding. Maybe he didn't even know about the will, or maybe he just died in the meantime. Not sure if we'll ever know.
Yeah, it seems like that. This is one of those ones that's just going to kind of go to the grave, you know? We'll never get any kind of clarity on. But yeah, it's interesting that, like, digging into it more, seeing all of the stuff that came out against him, that's just, like, doesn't paint a good picture of, like, his intent and definitely to me, it took a lot of heat off of Johnny Depp, for sure. There's one last tidbit. I don't know if you saw it either, but I guess there was a telephone call. There was an answering machine. Or there was a telephone call placed from Fox's home left on an answering machine. It's not clear whose answering machine it was. Maybe it was Fox's. But anyway, it said, which could have held important clues. It was never impounded as evidence during them taking the report of his disappearance, and it's never been located. So I don't even know how the fuck that piece of information came out, but that's just another one of those pieces that kind of scratch your head.
I saw that too, and from what I understood, it was his answering machine, which I don't know how important or unimportant that would be, but it does seem strange. It seems strange that it would be missing with no real explanation. So
it reminded me of the Goonies when the guy's telling, he's like, if that were true, how did the fucking story come out? How would you even know that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, how did they know it was missing? Maybe a witness said that they could have just been totally innocent. Somebody mentioned, oh yeah, I left him a voicemail the day before, and that was it. And then they just happened to not find it, or I don't know. But it could be one of those things that has zero impact, or it could be, important in some way.
I think that's all I have for, the background of the case and, the for and against Johnny Depp doing it, not doing it, having any kind of involvement with it. So I think the very last thing I wanted to bounce back to that I just thought was interesting about the history of the Viper Room itself as a location and a historical Hollywood landmark was, so I guess after the dust had settled on the Depp lawsuit and he had, transferred his ownership and stake and all that to Anthony Fox's daughter, Amanda Fox. So post 2004 to the present, it's still called the Viper Room, but it was also mid-aughts to late aughts. It was the base of an underground poker ring, allegedly founded by actor Tobey Maguire, who's, I think it's well known that he's involved in high stakes illegal poker. And that ring was also said to have included other high profile Hollywood celebs and elites such as Ben Affleck, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Macaulay Culkin, Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, Nelly, the Olsen twins, and famous poker player Phil Ivey. So that.
Oh man, I bet Phil Ivey just loved cleaning house on these idiot celebrities,
right? Just mopping them. So that same poker ring is what inspired. I'm sure a lot of people have seen or heard about Molly Bloom. Who later they made it into a film in 2017 called Molly's Game, starring Jessica Chastain, about former U.S. Olympic hopeful Molly Bloom, who hosted the poker game between 2007 2008 under the auspices of her event and catering company, Molly Bloom Inc., with hands reportedly going as high as $4 million. I thought that was just kind of interesting, that, all the sordid past with mobsters and gangsters and, drug running, racketeering, the stuff with the Viper Room. And when Johnny Depp went into it too, it was quoted as being a well-known, drug hangout. That's where you go to get the good shit kind of stuff. And it seemed like that was kind of, it was fostered there. I mean, and two, I don't think River Phoenix was the only person to OD there. I think there was a guy from INXS. Think of that song. What are they famous for? The I've got to let you know. That song. I think one of those dudes, either the lead singer. I think he OD'd in the bathroom there.
I'm pretty sure the lead singer of INXS died due to autoerotic asphyxiation.
That's right. Okay, I think it was a bass player or guitar player. I didn't plan well enough for that.
Yeah, that name. The music world weeps that we don't have NXS anymore.
Yeah, the bass player from NXS. Yeah, and I think there was one other thing that happened there, like either a near OD or OD, but yeah. Anyway, just like the whole history of the place is it's been turbulent for the last 60, 80 years that it's been going.
Yeah.
And there's some other stuff too about it being like possibly haunted, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I guess they did like a one of those ghost adventures or whatever, like those shows where they go in with the camera, like found footage style, and they tried to talk to spirits and shit, because they think that one piece of speculation is they think that Anthony Fox was murdered and buried in the basement of the Viper Room. So they did a Ghost Adventures, I think is the show, where they go in there and they tried to contact spirits and use a Ouija board and all that shit, but nothing ever came out of it.
No, the only thing, I feel like all those episodes are the same. They're doing creepy shit, and that's like, oh, did you hear that? It's like, no, I didn't hear anything.
It was a door creaking. It makes me think of that Brian Regan when he's talking about when he's going out there like scientists, like listening to whales and shit, and it's all, and he's like, he's lonely. And then he turns back and it's just a door to the boat swinging back and forth. Yeah, so all that's hogwash. But there's some people that think it's cursed and haunted, and there's another. I know that's not something foreign to like LA landmarks, because they have so much history in the 40s and 50s of like mobsters, and like, I'm sure shit tons of people got murdered. There's the Black Dahlia thing that happened, and I guess the Comedy Store is famously haunted too. There's been a lot of people talk about they've seen like comics and stuff saying they've heard and seen weird shit there too. So the Viper Room, it just adds to that that vibe, that historical LA nightlife context of it being weird shit going on. But
yeah, and it's been around just about 100 years now, and it sounds like there's been, if not organized crime, like a criminal underworld element associated with it probably that entire time. So it's no wonder that there's controversy or mystery surrounding it,
Right. And then I have one last tidbit of trivia that I thought you would get a kick out of. So when I talked about Johnny Depp being styling himself as like a guitar player and a rock star kind of guy, I guess he played guitar on the soundtrack of Chocolat.
Oh my god.
Oh man, when I read that, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to fucking lay that.
I wonder what
down.
type of guitar was he playing? Like, I can't even imagine what the soundtrack of that movie is like.
It's got to be some like classical shit.
I think you're right.
Something.
Do you remember those old infomercials for the Esteban guitars?
Oh yeah, he's got like those creepy long ass fingernails.
Yeah. That's kind of what I imagine him playing the guitar like.
Dude, that's what he's gonna look like when he's older. Just like a prune with like a Zorro hat and long ass fucking witch fingers.
And then maybe he'll be the one taking a grumpy in the bed.
He needs some milk.
Dude, I have to start incorporating that into my daily lexicon. A grumpy. That's so fucking funny. That's like going beyond goblin mode.
Yeah.
Grumpy. Grumpkins. All right. Well, I think that's it for old J Depp and the Viper Room. Nothing was solved, but it was fun to talk about. And just like with anything else, you hear about something sensationalized, or it's got like this air around it. It's like once I actually dug into it, it's like, yeah, this is not pedestrian, but it didn't live up to like what I was thinking and what like really started making my toes curl about it. So I guess if anybody listens to this and has any tidbits they want to share or just bounce anything off of us, you could send us an email to our account wax@waxingtheporpoise.com. hit us up on Instagram, Waxing the Porpoise, and or Twitter, Waxing the Porp. We'd really appreciate too if you guys are actually enjoying the show. I don't want anyone to just throw us 5 stars or give us a review, but if you're actually listening and you're digging the show, iTunes reviews, Spotify reviews really help out getting us discovered and in more people's ear holes. So if you would do that, that would be greatly appreciated.
And a banana cognac, bitch!
So I guess, you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to...
You have any moves? I'd like to see you incorporate them.
talk about before we put this bitch to bed?
I think we pretty much covered it.
All right. Okay, so then let's go into our randomizer here, see what we're going to be talking about next week. All right, looks like we're swinging back the other way to another movie. And let's see what we're going to be talking about.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
We are going to be discussing, another Ridley Scott film, and starring Michael Douglas. This is one of my favorite films of all time. Can you guess what it is, Steve? Late 80s.
Chocolat.
No.
Chocolat.
We're going to be watching Black Rain. Hell yeah. So
you need to chill on that soundboard.
On the bumpage. I'm making up for last time. Chill. Ooh, that's another dude. I should get Arnold from Eraser. Your luggage.
Yeah. You've just been erased.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I should know this. I think it's 1987. Black Rain is from 89. God damn it! Yeah, I have a poster of this in my home office behind me that gets a lot of love. This is
that, man?
What do you mean by that?
A great film. Whenever I'm in meetings or whatever, they're like, "Oh, Black Rain." Like one of our coworkers that every single time he makes me read the tagline on the front of the poster, and it's like, what is it? An American cop in Japan, their country, their laws, their game, his rules. Every time makes me read that. But this is another Ridley Scott film. Michael Douglas is fucking awesome in it. Who else is it? Andy Garcia too. Yeah, if you're an Andy Garcia fan, you'll like it just off of that alone. But yeah, this is another great or greatest film. We'll find out next week. So thanks.
It looks pretty corny, but I'll keep an open mind.
It's dope. I don't know how you're gonna feel about it actually after watching Blade Runner, but put that aside. Just Michael Douglas is badass. Andy Garcia's in it, and it's. I
love Ghost in the Darkness.
Yeah, so that's another plus in its direction. So yeah, he plays just a straight up badass in this film. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. So that'll wrap it up for us. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us, and take care.
Thanks.
Fucking filthy, dirty, fucking cockfucker.